Alright, we are recording for chapter 16 of the motion picture. The motion picture novelization, of course. So let me just see. I haven't looked at my notes first, because I didn't start highlighting things right away. They do mention that Kirk has given the order, and certain Decker has made sure of it, that no one has any kind of sense of going. Okay? Nothing at all. We want to have nothing that scans V'ger. They don't know it's V'ger yet, but still, nothing scans it, because when episode 9 did that, it kind of started to be, destroyed. So don't want to do that. Yeah. So they are trying to be very cautious here. Yeah, let's talk about this first. The incredible speed of their combined closure rate was complicated by the unusual mechanics of hyperspace, and an eye blink of a navigational error could see them flashing past the intruder cloud and a million stars past it. Excuse me. I don't like that statement. I do not. Nor some statements later on. It was hardly a pinpoint of just slightly warmer color than the coalesced star mass ahead. I do not like the description for how warp appears in this. Going back to the coalescing of the stars, I get the idea, but that is never how I can remember it being portrayed in the original series, in any of the 90s series, or in any of the films. Even the motion picture, but to be fair, 2 through 6 of the original cast, those are, I'm much more familiar with them, and I want to say they're much more consistent, because the effect for entering warp in the motion picture is completely different from what you see in the rest. So, yeah. But it's also this idea that you could flash past and just go sailing right out there. Sorry, very different story. That you could just flash past by accident because they're going to warp. Well, V'ger's going to warp 7. Enterprise is going to warp 7. It's like, okay, yeah, I got that. That makes sense. And they should be on a head-on collision or a head-on course because, well, it's not quite that, but more or less it should be direct because they left from Earth and it's approaching Earth. So, yeah. So I get the whole, you could miss by just a little bit and go sailing past, but still this thing is larger than the total orbit of Pluto at 82 AU across. And Pluto's orbit has a radius of not quite 40, so it's about 80 AU one side of Pluto's orbit to the other. This thing's bigger. That's huge. So the idea of you missing that, and that, you can go by in a blink of an eye, but then it's a pinpoint. Now it's fingernail. Now it's a coin. It's like, I guess it's not really a flash that you can, it's like you got plenty of time apparently to correct. So, yeah. That's more so just, it's trying to build tension, but it's doing it in a way that is inconsistent, where it's like, well, wait a minute, there's no tension here. You've got plenty of time to adapt because you see it you have time to change your course because you do see it coming. It's not and then it's there. One other thing I will add that... Okay. I'm just trying to make sure... Oh yeah, I forgot to make that up. That's fine. It also describes that they were on a conic interception course. Which on its own makes sense as a tactic, but there is a technical issue with it that, to be fair, might not have been reasoned out yet for the Star Trek science Bible, if you will. So basically, just this is how the science works in Star Trek, how the physics works in Star Trek, might not have been figured out here yet. But the idea of the conic interception course is that it's going to take a conic section, so in this case most likely would resemble a parabola, where, yes, even though approaching like this, it's actually intentionally trying to turn around and come around like that, so they get behind it and can then approach it in a perfect pursuit. The reason why that makes sense is, well, you can then control your approach there, kind of, sort of, because then it's not going like that, but you can crawl up on them slowly or quickly if you want. They want to go slow because they don't want to appear hostile. They're just there to investigate. And all that I'm good with, except for the whole Spock told them, don't go above this speed. Okay, now we're going above that speed. I mean, even does say at one point, Sulu's talking about how, yeah, we're at 8.8. Spock had told him 7.6 before was the limit. Not that they couldn't go above that, but that, yeah, that's dangerous until we balance the warp core, until we balance the warp engine. It's like, make up your mind. So there's that. But the other thing, and this is more so what I was saying with the whole may not have figured out the physics yet, is the Enterprise. Hang on, do I have something? I don't think I have any good model I could grab with this. The Enterprise is going sideways, which is a problem. So instead of it being like this and or coming on like that, no, it's actually always keeping the Enterprise facing the center, so it's actually moving like this. The reason why that's a problem is because there is actually a geometry to the warp field. Now, as I said, this may have been decided on after this book had been written, or after the movie had been made. But that there's a reason why the nacelles are designed the way they are for how they produce the field, but also even the saucer section. This is actually the thing that I consider more important for a weird reason. But there's a reason why they have a saucer section. Because it helps in the formation of the warp field. But it's like, there is a directionality to it. So the idea of going to the side, it's like you're at minimum going to be impacting the efficiency of the warp field. Likely very severely, because at some points you're at 90 degrees to the most efficient line on the warp field. Yeah, no, I got major problems with that. But as I said, it might just be they hadn't thought that through. But going back to the saucer section, the reason why it's shaped that way, the reason why it's a circle, although in some cases it becomes more of an oval, that's fine, it actually helps with how the warp field is formed, because apparently the warp field is impacted by the shape of the ship. Excuse me. So having the circle there helps it be smooth and even and efficient, which is why you do actually see, I think in the animated series, you do see some where they have a ball for the saucer section, the forward section. There was actually a sphere, and also, it might actually be in Cisco's office instead of in Picard's, but there is actually a model in one of the captain offices that shows like an old, very old style ship that has the spherical front to it. Now, the reason why I find that, I learned about that years ago. I find that interesting, this idea that that helps with forming the warp field, helps it be stable, helps it be efficient. But they found that, hey, it doesn't need to be a ball. We can go to a disc, a saucer, and that still works. And then work on that. It's like, I find that really clever. I really like that. But it also is one reason why I dislike Enterprise, the show Enterprise, because they gave the NX-01 a saucer. So that would mean that the canon would be, they found the saucer section, and that worked for achieving Warp 5, which is supposed to be the Warp 5 engine, which is supposed to be very difficult to achieve, yada, yada, yada. So they find that, and then they go to the ball, because that's easy, because, this makes things easier, but then it's like, we go back to the saucer section, because that's all you actually need. It's like, no. It's like, you can't have and that would be like, hey, we figured out the jet engine, then we went to the propeller, and then back to the jet engine. It's like, even if it's like the classic ramjet to propeller to turbine jet engine, it still is a ramjet. In many ways is still superior to to a prop. And I can see somebody making an argument, like if you have the ramjet and you figure out a propeller engine, then you'd be like, well, wait, why don't we just put the blades instead of on the outside of an engine inside of the chamber for the ramjet, and then you get the turbine and jet engine. So it's like, I know it's a weird technical complaint to have about Enterprise, but it is a legitimate complaint about Star Trek Enterprise, that that design to the ship does not make sense. It does not fit in to the stuff that had been established prior to that for the development of Earth-designed starships. Now, of course, it is true that you do have, with the Klingons and with the Romulans, completely different designs. Although they always have those two nacelles. off to the sides. It's only the Ferengi are different, the Cardassian are different. Both of those only originate in TNG. Oh man, yeah, and that's true. There's actually a number of species that don't necessarily have two nacelles. The Ferengi, though, they might still have it. It's just only at the back of the ship where it's all lit up there. I'm also just remembering that there's one ship design that has like a sphere. It's actually a really kind of neat looking ship. But I think that was also supposed to be like, yeah, it has a completely different system to it. So, yeah. And then, of course, there's the Borg, but the Borg is just like, well, we're powerful. So, we like the shape of a cube. We're just going to do it with a cube. It doesn't matter if we're technically brute forcing it. We want the cube. I'm not going to argue with the Borg on that one. Although, technically, since the sphere, the Borg sphere is a much smaller ship, maybe it is they got less power, so they go to the sphere because that helps with the warp field. I could see that being an argument. Anyway. I was just finishing off with Enterprise. I could just believe they thought they were thinking, well, that has to be the design because we want it to look cool and want to look like a Star Trek ship that's recognizable as opposed to a Star Trek ship as has been described and even illustrated as existing at that time or slightly after that time. It's like, why should we be accurate to the history of the thing we're trying to make? I got so many issues with Enterprise. I really do. Anyhow, one thing that I have noted in here, well, highlighted here, it's not actually my notes, I forgot. It talks about the 3 Klingon starships, each of them at least nearly as strong as the Enterprise. I have an issue with this. That is technically false. Well, yes, it is technically false, because it is not, or it can be misinterpreted, which makes it a poor statement. There is no reason to believe that those, even though they're supposed to be the newer versions, the I don't remember what it was, D6, D7, whatever, the newer heavy cruisers, they should be more directly comparable to the Constitution class, which, yes, the Enterprise is an example. But this is the Constitution refit. I think it's unlikely that if the Constitution were already ahead of the Klingons, I can understand them being like, okay, the Klingons have gotten ahead of the Constitution, but then we're at the refit. Like, the refit should just be more powerful. Yeah. So I don't like it making it sound like, oh, they should be at least nearly at least as powerful. It's like, well, no, the refit actually is like even an untested level of power. Like on paper, it's supposed to be at this level, but it might be more. We don't know. It hasn't been tested yet. So these should not be compared against it. Yeah. Oh, and I will also mention, it does seem odd, again, that even though it's not been stated specifically before, there is a statement in this chapter about the Enterprise being the most powerful ship in Starfleet, which does indicate then, it does heavily imply, there is no other Constitution refit, which seems really weird and kind of dumb. I'm sorry, you got a ship that's been out there for 5 years, it comes back, hey, now we're going to start doing modifications. Not hey, why don't we take one of the other ones that's here? Why don't we take the prototype and start working on that? This thing comes back, it'll just be the first one that's active in the fleet for this. I mean, it's like, I don't necessarily know why you do that. But whatever, it still is. That is an indication that, yes, this is the first and only Constitution refit, and it is the most powerful ship available to them. Although that's also a little funny because technically in Wrath of Khan, I'm not sure how many years after, the Reliant is described by Spock as it can outrun us and outgun us. Now technically that was at a time after the Enterprise had already been damaged, as had been the Reliant, but still technically that would seem to suggest then that the Reliant might actually be more powerful than the refit. How did we get to that point? I mean, just to be fair though, the motion picture probably more like the original series, which is the Constitution class is a starship. Other things are not starships; they're something else, and that the starships are the most powerful thing out there, and that there's only like 12 of them, and there's almost you have to be a true paragon to be we're the captain of them. Yeah, it's kind of messy. And also some that is probably just, well, because it's the ship we're talking about, it's the most important ship there is. And so there are others like it, but this is, they all then have to be really, really exceptional. It's like, I hate that. I'm sorry, it's one thing when it's like, yes, Kirk is great, but you explore him and you do find his weaknesses. But to just, I mean, it's also like one of my annoyances with the television show MASH. That's like, they have the best record of all the MASHers. It's like, we really don't need that. They don't need to be the best, because it just seems like, it's like, why? It's not necessary. They don't need to be the best. Let them be trading positions with other people, because it doesn't matter that much. That's not what is important. It's the characters are important. It's also like how it annoys the hell out of me in TNG that the Enterprise D is described as Starfleet's flagship. No, because a flagship has an admiral with a flag on there. Use a different term. I mean, if it's the show ship, essentially this is the one that it is the most famous. It's the one that, for all the diplomatic stuff, this is where we send, because it's the magnificent looking one. That's sort of, this isn't quite a good comparison, but it would be like Air Force One, or I think we used to have a presidential yacht. I don't quite remember, but let's say Air Force One, because it is meant for show also. Like it is very functional, but it isn't for combat. It is meant for show, whereas a aircraft carrier or a battleship would be a flagship if an admiral's on. It's like different functions. The Enterprise D, it does explain one thing, why they basically never seem to be exploring, because like, I mean, they technically shouldn't, because it's like, it's the one that is meant to show off. And so, yeah, but it being named as a flagship in the Next Generation, to me, I do take that as the same kind of just patting themselves on the back. Oh, isn't this awesome? Isn't this amazing? It's the best there is. It's like, don't do that. It's not necessary. Or at least give explanation for why. Okay, so like right here, this is actually a flagship because it is Kirk's flag. Because it is Kirk's flagship. He is an admiral, but this is at least described as the most powerful ship in Starfleet. Okay, it's not being called a flagship. It's just, it is the most powerful, and we know why. It's been explained to us. That has not been given to us for the Enterprise D. That's part of the reason why I'm so annoyed there. And it's also with like MASH 477. We know them the best, so we see them being all great and wonderful and amazing, but we don't know anything about the other MASHs, so just saying that it's the best, it's empty, it's meaningless. Going back to when I was going through the Phantom Menace, how it then just started talking about how, oh yes, Qui-Gon is one of the best swordsmen in the entire galaxy. It's like, but we'd seen like nothing to prove this. It's just being stated, and even then, I'm reading, it's like, well, I know he gets, Maul beats him, so he's actually not that great. And then, as I was pointing out, you got all the problems of how the hell did Maul train, which is further complicated by the whole in Revenge of the Sith, that it had been so very long since Palpatine had even seen his lightsaber, had been able to hold it. So it's like, how could he have trained? I mean, it is better to show than tell, is kind of what it comes down to. Demonstrate the strength. Don't just declare it. Unless it is somehow declared in a way that makes sense. Because even here, we have had no actual action showing the Enterprise strength yet. However, it has been constantly talked about, the refit. Right? And how this and that. So it's just been built. It's smaller things, but they add up. So it's like, okay, I can believe it when it says it's the most powerful. I'm good with that. And in theory, in the next chapter, we're going to find out how much more powerful, because it's going to survive getting hit. The chapter ends. V'ger sending out the green thing that's going to hit it, and its shields will stop that, which means it is more powerful than those Klingon vessels. Okay? So it's like, that will be our first true confirmation that, yes, it is in fact really powerful. Okay? But it's still, it's like, I can believe it. Also, it is the Enterprise, it's Star Trek, so the Enterprise is awesome always. But it's like, yeah, it's you need substance there. Don't just keep saying it. And it also needs to make sense with the terminology, which, calling the Enterprise D a flagship without an admiral makes no sense. Anyhow, sorry, there's a spec on here. Oh yeah, thing here that again is me being technical. This was the part of all this which troubled him, Kirk, most. Any intelligence capable of star travel should have no problem translating lingua code. Its keys were universal constants like pi, simple molecular relationships, the speed of light. Adolescents with schoolroom computers could easily make sense of it. Okay, you are wrong. You are wrong. Also, I find it odd. Universal constants like pi, then you get to molecular relationships, then the speed of light. The speed of light is the universal constant. But there's also, you have no reason to believe that somebody's going to decode it correctly. Because, to use the speed of light, to use pi, 3.14159. Okay, yeah, that's in base 10. What if you use a different base? You now have a problem. There's also, even putting it into binary, pi goes on forever without any repetition in there. So, at what point do you terminate? And it's also, how does somebody interpret this? So it's like, oh yeah, I know this. It actually doesn't make sense because it's a very complex thing that you're trying to get across. And it was even occurring to me, so at least as far as America is concerned, and probably also Europe, Earth went dark within my lifetime. For any observers. Well, not completely. Because we went from analog to digital television transmissions. Because of the encoding and compression, well, the nature of compression, data compression, is you take patterns and you recognize patterns and then you express them in a simpler way. Well, yes, in a simpler way, so they're smaller. But a consequence of that is the resulting signal, the resulting data, should have minimal patterns to it. Okay? Because if there's a pattern that's left from the compression, then that's also a pattern that could have itself been compressed. Okay, so it inherently goes to a lack of patterns. Which means it looks like noise. How do you know it's noise of any meaning? You don't. So by moving from analog, which patterns are preserved in there, because the patterns are being sent raw, you can pick it up and it's like, oh, there is something ordered here. This is unnatural. Let's investigate. Now, technically, broadcast radio, that's still fine. Because that's still on analog. There is some digital, but that's still largely analog, which hopefully will never change because it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is like genuinely a safety thing. Because in theory, you can build a radio that would be able to pick up an AM transmission and send it to a speaker that you built. I was like, you like in Pastor's Courage, if the Germans were not actually trying to prevent them from having a radio, those POWs would have been able to build a radio very easily. And they did build a radio. They did have the components there. The amplifier would be the tricky part. But still, it's like assembling that from parts, if you know what you're doing, is not necessarily that difficult. But yeah, it's like I could believe analog will never die for radio because it is no, we need this as a way to communicate with people, that you don't need to be on this network or that network, and you don't need to know how to decode Opus instead of AAC, instead of MP3 or whatever. It's like, no, it's just, here it is. It's also, like on Voyager, the discs there are images on them, which is like, yeah, if you look at them, you would be able to interpret them, and they have records in there as well, that again, a record encodes everything analog. So you don't need to know, like for a CD, okay, what is the length of a byte in there? You don't need to know that. It's you just play it, and hey, it's producing sound. You would need to get the speed right potentially, but it's still that's one variable versus a whole large number. So instead, what I would suggest is the Fibonacci sequence. I think that would make much more sense, because that you can just do dot, 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 dot. I mean, it's like you can do that, and so long as the intervals make sense. I mean, it's like Morse code would it would also be something that could be potentially picked up, or at least recognized as, okay, this is intentional. It is not natural. But Fibonacci is something that I think is very reasonable. Every intelligent species would be familiar with. Because, I mean, think about it. Non-intelligent species, at least not super intelligent species on Earth, utilize it. Okay, I mean, it is present throughout nature here because of things like it relates to phi, the golden ratio. So you do see that in like how petals may arrange themselves, or I'm not sure what they would be called, but like within the center of a flower, you have little things. It's like how they arrange there. The conch shell follows the golden ratio as well, and again, it relates to Fibonacci. So if you were to tap that out, and you just make sure that the intervals, mainly the interval space between the tapping out the numbers, as long as that is constant, yes, absolutely, that would be read and interpreted, and would be recognized as, okay, they're sending us these numbers. We understand this now, and it's also there's no concern with bases because dot is 2. It's like it doesn't matter if you would represent 2 as 2 or 1 0 for binary. It doesn't matter. It's still, well, yeah, it's still that. So anyway, yeah, pursuit acceleration now at warp 8.8. As I said, why are they breaking Spock's rule? Nothing here. Which this at least is partially, I don't remember if it all is in the motion picture. I have a preliminary estimate of a 12th power energy field emanating from the cloud. 12th power? Sulu interrupted in disbelief. Kirk was feeling the same surprise. 12th power energy was on a scale that could stop the Earth's sun from rotating. Here's my problem. I don't know what this means. And I checked. E equals mc squared, right? Let's say m is 1, which would be 1 kilogram. C squared is already at, like, what was it, 8 times 10 to the 16th? So if you could just convert 1 kilogram of mass to energy, which that's exactly what matter-antimatter reactions would be doing, that's already to the 16th power, almost the 17th. Maybe the 12th power means something completely different? I don't know, because it's like, you know what? Hang on, let me look something up. Star Trek Photon Torpedo Warhead. Because photon torpedoes are supposed to have an antimatter warhead. How much is it? Yeah, the warhead had a detonation chamber filled with antimatter. Fine. How much? Oh, come on. I have no idea where it... Hang on. Maybe? No. Ah, here we go. Apparently, the Star Trek Next Generation Technical Manual, second type of warhead was loaded with a maximum yield of only 1.5 kilograms of anti-deuterium. 1.5 and 1.5, so that's 3 kilograms of mass. So that's 3 times 8 times 10 to the 16th. If they're talking 12 powers and 4s of magnitude, this second type warhead for a photon torpedo is more powerful than this. This is why I really like not giving numbers. And by using standard physics calculations of payload of 1.5 kilograms. That's not true. It would be 3, because you need to double it. It's 1.5 kilograms of antideuterium, but if you, that it's 3 total kilograms that gets converted to energy, because that is going with something else. You are matching that. Was equal to about 64.4 megatons. Okay. Which doesn't actually sound that much. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything else. Yeah, alright. That actually makes sense. But 2271. When would that be? Oh, okay. 2271 would actually be around now. Because there's a reference. I mean, it's 4 years after the Corbinite maneuver, or no, the Deadly Years, which is still, that's an episode of the original series. So this actually would have. And wait, where did I see 2271? Saw it up here. Second type, which became operational in 2271. Yeah. So technically, for what it's saying here in that quick math I did, which it would mean that they already have proton torpedoes that would be beyond that power. Yeah, I got no idea what 12th power is. Hopefully it's a completely different reference than just order of magnitude, because it makes no sense otherwise. But then it also has another thing here that's like saying that even as they're approaching, yet they were still uncountable trillions of kilometers away. Okay, I did this math as well. And by math, I mean I just, looked up the conversion. When it's still 5 minutes from the boundary of the cloud, which the cloud is supposed to be 82 AU across. That was the last measurement we got, and nothing has been stated to change that. So a 41 AU radius, that's how far away they'd be from the center. If they're at the boundary, they're 5 minutes from it. I'm just going to assume that still puts them relatively near. Because, I mean, is still being described as pretty close. Actually, and right after this statement, it says 4 minutes, so yeah. But it still is. 41 AU would be 6.12 times 10 to the 9th. Thousands is 3. Million is 6. Billion is 9. So we're the just from the outside of the cloud to the center is just in the billions of kilometers away. We're trillions of trillions of kilometers away. You ain't anywhere near this thing, because that is very far away. Then I mean, it's like many orders of magnitude away. So yeah, I got a problem with this. I mean, maybe it is a. We're 5 minutes away where it's over here and we're really far back here. Maybe that is the case. But it's. I don't like it. I don't like it. I feel like this is just the scale's not being paid attention to again. Yeah. But that also does mean that we're still only talking that for the total width of this thing is about 10 billion. It's on the order of 10 billion kilometers across, which is big, but still to be trillions and trillions. Yeah, I just, and I feel like there was something that did suggest that they were pretty damn close to the boundary. Hang on. They are close, or as close as when Klingons were destroyed. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. The Vidra has started scanning them. Yeah, the Klingons were first hit at about this distance. This is before the 5 minutes away thing. Yeah, and they were still uncountable trillions of kilometers away. I mean, it also doesn't help the whole. I have no sense of what the warp scale is because they're at 8.8, but it's at 7. It's at warp 7, so yeah. And I do know that warp scale is nonlinear. I'm pretty sure it's actually logarithmic. So that 1.8 difference there could actually be small. It could be huge. So it's, and I don't. Also, I'm not sure if there might be some other relativistic kind of effects going on there where it's, yeah. So I'm really not sure what all is going on with that. But maybe it is the trillions and trillions away, but that just seems unlikely to me. That they're, I think it's more reasonable that they're probably pretty damn close to it. And the 5 minutes, 4 minutes is just, yeah, it still takes a while to cross. I mean, it still is. Oh man, what is it, like 8 minutes between, for one AU is like 8 minutes at the speed of light. So yes, they are traveling faster than the speed of light. It's traveling faster than speed. So it's like, it could still be that they're only a few AU away, that they're a fraction of the cloud's total size away. So it's, yeah. As I said, this is why I like not getting into the numbers when writing myself, because for one thing, it's not really necessary. I think we tend to think more so in relative terms. It's like mentioning megatons there. It's like, okay, what the hell does a megaton really mean? I mean, yeah, it's millions of tons of TNT, that's fine. But it's like, when you talk about how, oh, it can destroy a city. Okay, don't even know what a megaton is. I know what a city is. It being destroyed, okay, that takes a lot. I mean, it's like, a relative term, I think, is more valuable, and it is a way to potentially avoid falling into these errors. Now, it still is, you need to be consistent, because I complained like hell with Revenge of the Sith, talking about how, oh yeah, a turbo laser can destroy a small town. It's like, that's a disturbing level of power that should not be. It's, give me a Star Destroyer that has a few dozen of those things on it. I don't need a Death Star. I won't. The destruction of a planet, the whole poof. There's value there for terror, but for just conquering, I don't need it. One Star Destroyer is all I need. So yeah, I mean it's, yeah. But it is also, how do you have a ship survive being shot by any? I mean, scale is important. Try to get it right. Because you may just end up with a reader that's like me and is going to be like, not right. Stop this common mistake. Be better than it. You can be. I mean, I know I'm technical. So I know what to try to do. I may still make mistakes. I may still get it wrong. That's fine. It happens. Okay? But I can try to get it right, because I have enough of a background that I can try to get it right. You don't need that background. Yeah, as I said, if you just go with relative terms, you're fine. We'll still understand it when we read it. So don't feel you need to get technical, right? Don't feel you need to get. We don't need it as a reader, okay? We don't. Unless you're writing a technical manual for your story. That's fine. Then get technical. But then you're already solving the problem, because you're going to be making sure that you're keeping consistent, okay? So yeah, just try to maintain that consistency within the universe, but also with reality. Okay, that's kind of it. Is that it's not just because yeah, I'm technical. Would I be? It's only in these videos I really complain about it. Okay, it's just I read and it's like, oh, this is kind of annoying, but I keep reading. It doesn't make me stop reading. So if you make a mistake, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just I see it so much in science fiction, it annoys me, and I'm just I trying to make sure I do better, and I'm pleading with anyone who may watch this, and I doubt anyone is, you can also do better. And there's many ways of doing it. You can get technical and make sure you're getting it right. And if you make a mistake, that's cool. We get it. It's okay. It's okay. Or go relative. And you can mix between the two. That's fine. You don't need to be, if I'm relative, I can't be technical. No, you can do both. Whatever it calls for, whatever's most appropriate. But try to get it right. See you next time.